table saw right there. Let's check this thing out. Power button right down here. We pull it, get that blade going. A lot of times I'll just, bump it with my knee there, and then we're good to go. Our blade is underneath our blade guard, right? And you can see it's just like our chop saw blade. And one of the things we need to be aware of is the blade height. Right now, this one's too tall for this piece of material. So if we take a look down in front, we've got this wheel, and we can adjust our blade height. So I will turn it clockwise. That goes up. I'm going to go down, drop this down. And the blade should be about an 1/8 inch above the material. Okay, right about there. I like it says an 1/8 inch on the test, but I just like shoot for the bottom of that tooth gap. Right. So let's go ahead and drop that down just a bit. Okay. The other thing we can do on this thing, if you look right here, is we can change our angle. Right. That's that wheel over here on the side. So out on the left side of it, we'll go ahead and adjust our angle. Let's go ahead and give it a couple and see what we got down to. We're at 8.5 degrees, right? So let's get that back to 0. Right. Other things we got on here, we got our blade guard, okay, on this one. And this is also the insert. So let's go ahead and take the insert out. So we'll grab right there, yank that out, and pop it out. Okay, I'm going to take this blade guard out for a second. And then we got our kickback guards. We'll talk about those in a minute when we put it back in. I'm just showing you how to take this out. And then down in here, we've got this little lever. Let's pop that out, okay? And then we can yank the whole assembly out, okay? And so there we go. And then we'll get that back down. To get this throat plate back in here, see these screws down on the end? So let's take a look at those. So right here underneath, those are going to hook onto these screws right here, right? So we got to make sure when we put this back in that we're kind of leaning forward and kind of make sure that kicks in there. So these doesn't come up. I can't pull up on it, okay? And then we should be good here as well, okay? When we put this in too, when we get a board, we should be able to slide on, right? If it's a little bit too tall or this is left up, we're going to hit it. And we don't want to pick something up before we start putting it into a blade. So it should slide on. The other thing, it should slide off the back end, okay? So our board, if we're making cuts and it is too low, there's an adjustment screw right there, then it can get caught right there. So if you find you're getting into a cut and it gets stuck, maybe because of that throat plate is not in the correct plate position. So, or insert. Let's get that back in. So I got to open up this one right here. And then we're going to grab our blade guard again. Okay. Drop it into position, like so. We're going to lock it down. Okay. And then again with our insert, we got to get it underneath. And then we're good to go here. Okay. So now let's take a look at this thing. So this is the splitter right here. We're going to talk about that when I throw the camera back up on the mount. And then we'll drop this down. These are the kickback guards, okay? And there's 2 of them, one on each side. And what those do, as the board's coming through, and we get down to this spot, right? If the board, like when the blade's on, it's spinning this way. And so if it catches, it's going to kick the board back behind us. It's going to just toss it, right? And so what we want to do is utilize those kickback guards, because if it tries to back up, hopefully those will bite into the material and it won't let it go backwards anymore, okay? So that's what those are for. Those are our kickback guards, so the board doesn't go flying backwards on us, okay? Other than that, when we use this, we should always have this blade guard on. Mr. Duffy might take it off, the teacher, so always have it on, all right? So that was a rundown mostly of all the things. We're going to hit on a couple more here. So let's get good camera position. Hey, yo. All right, so here we talked about that splitter real quick. One thing I want to show you is as we're cutting boards and we get into the cut, right? So sometimes there's internal stress on the board. And so sometimes I've seen it when I make a cut, and sometimes the board goes like that. Sometimes it goes like that. Sometimes it goes like this. And then sometimes it pinches. So that's kind of what that splitter does for us. Because as we're making a cut, sometimes I find it's harder and harder to cut. Like I can't push it and it's getting stuck. It's because that board's trying to push back together because of internal stress. Wood is a live material, they call it. And so it's kind of run into problems sometimes. So if that happens, typically I'll just stop my cut, I'll make sure my body is out of the way, and I'll turn off the power and let it come down to a stop so that we're good to go. If it kicks back, it's going to go past me. I want to get out of the way of that. So danger zone, anybody who's waiting should not be behind. They should be stepped off to the side. We've got this big tape box, I would prefer the next person to be outside of it over there. So let's make a cut. Let's get this set. I got my fence here. Drop this over. Our kickback guards are down. Get my blade guard in position again. I don't really need a push stick on this, so I'm going to do one cut without. And when I put my hand, I'm going to see the blade here. Here's my fence. I'm going to put it right in the middle. Okay. The reason being is if I put my hand right against the edge, notice I push it and the board wants to get away, right? If I put a push stick there, it starts twisting away from the fence. And if it does that, it's going to jump on top of that blade and then kick back. It'll twist and catch and throw it back at me. So you want to make sure you always have pressure against the fence. And also I got pressure against the fence, and then also I don't put my push stick right there on the end. I like to hold it in the middle between the blade and the cut itself. Okay, so let's get that one right here. So I lock this down and make a cut. Okay, watch my left hand is stopping before it gets to the red. I never go into that red area. Okay, and now this hand's done. I'm next to the splitter up there, so we're good to go. We've got the straps in there. We're just going to leave them. Might want to step out of the way. Sometimes they might get caught and kick back at me. I'm just going to go and yank that out of there. And there we go. I mentioned before when we were on the joiner is that I usually go to the joiner first and we get a good edge. And I'm going to put that good edge against the fence before I make my cut here so that we have a good parallel edges on both sides. That way it could be 4 inches or 5 all the way across the whole thing. One thing I didn't show you, and you'll have to look at it when you get to it, but right now I am set to 5 and 32nd actually. So this is our width between the side of the blade and the fence, right? And so there's 2 of them. This one is for if the fence was up over here on the other side, okay? Other things we can do with this. Let's go and cut a thicker piece. Get this fence out of the way. Let's grab our miter gauge. We'll throw that in the slot. I'm going to have to adjust my blade height for this board. Make sure I'm about an 1/8 inch above the material. Okay, make sure we're cutting all the way through. Get our blade guard back down in place. And I'm going to use my miter gauge, and I'll talk about the details here in a second. Okay, so doing that correctly, using the miter gauge, when I put the board on, okay, we think about our body position, okay? This wouldn't be a good setup right now. My arm, my body's in front of the blade. It's not a good position, right? It doesn't matter if you're left-handed or right-handed. If I'm on this side, then I should shift over. My right hand's here, my left hand's here, okay? This left hand is putting pressure back towards my other hand. So I'm trying to pinch these 2 together to hold this in good position. I don't want to put my hand out here and I'm twisting here. I don't want it on the inside, twisting on the inside. So all that pressure should be right over the miter slot. I like to hold it there. I've got a bigger board, I can hold it out here. But right here, it should just be this. If I was on the other side, we would throw it like this. So I'd switch my hands. Again, this is no good. Right in front of the blade, over the blade. No, thank you. Let's get hands here out of position, out of the way of the blade, and make our cut from there. Okay. So that's called cross-cutting when we do that. When we did our other cut using the fence, when we were going with the grain, we're ripping. So we've got cross cutting with the miter gauge, okay, and then we got ripping, okay. There's reasons that we might do a cross cut over here versus just going to the chop saw and hit it. For a piece like this, I would definitely go to the chop saw. I don't really need to use cross cut on that. We can use the miter gauge and the fence at the same time if you need to make sure that, hey, we need a board that is 17 inches long right now. I can make my cut just using this as a guide. I don't really need to put pressure against it. All the pressure is still here, and we're making our cut across as well. Let's see what else is on the test here. Let's see what I missed. The table saw is mainly used to make rip cuts. True. Mostly making rip cuts here. Cross cut, sometimes, most of the time we go over to the chop saw and get it over there, our good for grain. The blade height should be set so that it extends about 1/8 inch above the work. Yes, that's true. Remember, I say about the bottom of that tooth, but it is about 1/8 inch. So make sure we're getting all the way through the material as we make those cuts. It is only necessary to use the blade guard when cutting narrow pieces. False. You're always going to use this, okay? So make sure that always have that blade guard on. I might take it off because I'm cutting some smaller pieces, but you always have the blade guard on. A push stick should be used when fingers come within 2 inches of the blade. Correct. If we're making a small cut, I'm never going to ask you to make something this small typically. I think the smallest we do is a 2.5. We'll set it to 2.5. So I've only got like a gap that's about that big right now. And during that cut, you would use a push stick. Let's go ahead and do one of those. Our blade height is a little too tall because of the last piece that we used. Let's drop that down. Okay, get that in position. Then I'm going to go ahead and get against the fence. Pressure against the fence using my hand. My hand's going to stop before I get to the red. It's just going to slide right here. My push stick is in position so that I can grab that as soon as I'm ready. And we're going all the way through. Okay. This hand's done. I'm going to let it go. I can go ahead and push that one as well. Okay. Using the push stick the whole time to kick out that extra scrap. I don't need to get my hands in there. As long as the guard is being used, no eye protection is needed for the table saw. That is false. You always need some safety glasses. It is safe to back out of a cut while the machine is running. False. If you start backing out of it, you're going to encourage a kickback, and it's just going to come back even faster at you because you're like, hey, come this way. And it says, okay, and it will. It'll throw you back at you. So do not back out of cuts. Material should always be held against the fence, yes, or the miter gauge, yes. Those are both true. So it's either tight against that fence or tight against that miter gauge. Both of them are good options for us. It is okay to run material with curved edges. False. Like we talked about, we would run through the joiner first to clean up that edge. If we had a curved edge in here, it's just going to start twisting and it'll jump on top of that blade and then kick back at us. So we want straight edges against the fence while we're making these cuts. The best position to stand while cutting is behind and to the right of the blade. As not on this cut, that's not going to work. Typically, we're going to be standing over here on the left, but if the fence was on the other side, I'd be standing on the right. So it's neither. That's false. There's not a great position, but we want to make sure that we got pressure against the fence, and I got support pushing it through. My push stick ready to go. Okay. Never distract someone while using the table saw. True. Don't distract people. Craziness. Why is it important to push your wood completely past the blade? Yeah, I've seen people push and the blade's right here. We stop and then it is cut through, but it can still get caught in between and it can kick back at you. So the board could get caught and thrown back at you. Explain what kickback is and what can cause it. It's when a board gets caught in the blade or the board is thrown backwards. Yeah. The board gets caught because of internal stress in the board, right? We talked about that. As we're cutting it, it might start wanting to pull back together. And then the last one was the board gets caught because the board twisted while being pushed through the table saw. And that can happen because you didn't keep pressure against the fence, or our push stick was against the fence and we kind of twisted it right there. So we got to think about where we're positioning those as we go. And then we did not mention this one, but it's leaf. What does it mean? Long edge against the fence. So typically we're always going to be going long edges against the fence. Making a cut like this, I've seen people try this. This is nonsense. It's just going to get caught, twist in there, kick back at me, all kinds of dangerous. If we were going to make a cut like this, again, you would need a miter gauge, and the long edge is against the miter gauge. So long edge against the fence or against the miter gauge. So it could be leaf, long edge against the fence, or leam, long edge against the miter gauge. Right? So I think that's all of it. Good luck. We'll see you on the flippy flop.